We'll be getting started in a couple of minutes. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. We've reached the top of the hour and we're ready to begin. My name is Karen Berger, and I want to welcome you to CASAS National News and Updates webinar. Today is November 18th, and we have a nice lineup prepared for you today. Our presenters include Linda Taylor from CASAS, our Vice President of Assessment Development. Also joining us from CASAS are Jesse Despain, Technology Specialist, and Richard Ackerman, CASAS Manager of Software Development. We are delighted to welcome our colleague, Maria Tellez, who is the Administrator of Counseling Services at Hacienda La Puente Adult School in California. She has a special presentation to share with us about registration and testing at her agency. Thank you, Maria, for joining us, and we are looking forward to your presentation. Many of you are familiar with Zoom, but we just want to go over a few features of this webinar. The first point is that your microphones are muted, and for obvious reasons, we have large numbers here, so that becomes a necessity. So the best way to communicate with us with questions about the presentation content is through the Q&A. Any questions that are not answered during the webinar will be added to our frequently asked questions documents on the website. The chat box is to be used only for technical difficulties with Zoom. And the last bullet point demonstrates the link where you can find copies of today's presentations, but we also put that in the chat box. Here's a little graphic about using a Zoom webinar. Of particular interest is the green bubble highlighting the Q&A, which we already mentioned. This is where you can ask questions for the presenters about their presentation content or any webinar content. Then going from left to right there's a button where you can check your audio settings. Again, the chat feature, which we use for technical difficulties in using Zoom. And today we'll not use the raise hand feature due to the large numbers. So here's what the Q&A will look like. You click on Q&A at the bottom, and as you can see, it will pop up, and there's two tabs. On one tab, you can see your own questions and answers, and you can click on the other tab to see the display of all questions and answers. And we will be recording this webinar, and it will be posted early tomorrow morning. Just go to casas.org to view today's and previous webinars in the CASAS News and Updates page. So now I'll hand the meeting over to Linda Taylor.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar today. So glad you could join us. Just want to start off by saying that this is not a training. It's an informational webinar. We do have trainings on our website, and we'll be telling you more about those later. Our first agenda topic is the new CASAS test series, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of our needs for that. Then we're going to give you an update on TOPS Pro Enterprise. Then, as Karen was just saying, Maria Tejas is going to give you a presentation about how they're doing things in their district, which should give you some very practical tips that you can apply in your local program. Then we'll be giving you an update about CASAS remote testing and end with some CASAS news. So to get started, we'll give an update about our CASAS NRS approved assessments, starting with the ABE ones. If you've been attending the last few webinars, we've been telling about this, but just to be sure, want to make sure everyone's aware. Nothing has changed for the reading goals for ABE. That is still approved through 2025, but there has been an extension on the approval period of math goals up through 2023. For ESL, it's a status quo as far as which tests are approved: life and work reading, beginning literacy, reading for language arts if you're permitted to use it in your state, and life and work listening 980 series. The thing that's new here is that this approval period has been extended till February of 2023, probably also through June of that year. And this is the same for all of the other NRS approved ESL tests. So in terms of the goal series, uh, again, status quo with reading goals, but math goals has the extended approval, and we are going to be submitting additional data for that to have an extension beyond that as well. For ESL, we have created the new test forms for the reading goals for ESL and the listening, but because of the COVID situation, as you can, I'm sure, well imagine, it's been it's been impossible to field test, or almost impossible. So that's another thing we are going to need your help with as soon as you feel able, hopefully, to do it at some point, because without field testing, we cannot submit those new series. They are strongly aligned to the College and Career Readiness standards and to the ELP standards for ESL. So just to tell you a little bit more about this listening and reading, the new series, they will eventually, as soon as we can get them field tested and approved, will replace life and work. One thing we're very excited about is that we're having 5 skill levels, as opposed to, it's currently 3 for listening now and 4 for reading. There will be 5 different levels, so that will give a more precise measure, we think, and probably result in less retesting. As I mentioned, these are aligned to these standards and are designed to measure these standards. Now, one thing we are asking today is for your help. When for all of our new test series, and also to continuously validate our current NRS approved series, we do have to do research studies. And for these research studies, there are certain demographic fields that are essential. Without these fields, we cannot run the studies that we need in order to, as I said, do ongoing validation or submit to the NRS. And these fields are gender, native language, ethnicity, and race. Ethnicity and race are kind of combined. So what we are appealing to you, begging, pleading, asking from the bottom of our heart is, if you possibly can help to collect these fields when your students do their regular testing, whether you're doing on-site testing now or remote. If you can add these fields on a regular basis, then it allows us to use those test scores and in these studies. So we know that will take a few extra minutes of the student's time during the test, and we know that time is precious to you and the student, but we wouldn't be asking unless we really needed to ask you to help with this. So we are hoping that many of you will be willing. I know some of you are already required to collect these fields, and for that, we know that if you're obliged to do it, that's appreciated, and we use that data, but it simply isn't enough. Because in most of the states around the country, you collect this information in other ways. So we are asking you now if you would be willing to add the collection of these fields to your testing process. So now I'm going to hand the screen over to Jesse Despain, and he's going to demonstrate how you can add these demographic fields to your test sessions.
Hello, everyone. It's a very simple process. It takes just a couple of minutes, and that's what I'm going to show you right now. So here is the Rolling Hills sample database. I've logged into eTests, and we're looking at the testing sessions. This is what you see initially. There's a lot of sessions here because it's our sample database, but yours will look a little different. What you want to do is click over here on the left, testing session templates. The reason for that is it's going to modify all of your sessions. It's more efficient and it's more standardized if you make these kind of changes in your template. So first step is to click here, testing session templates. I have 11 here, but you're more likely to have 2 or 3 in a production situation. So you'll only need to modify those 2 or 3 templates. You want to make sure to do all of them. Click edit. We'll do this first one here. So we've gone into the template itself. And then what you want to do is click on the data tab. Okay, and this is where we specify which data gets collected. In this particular example, we're already collecting student info, which is the student's name and ID. Of course, that is absolutely necessary. That's something that has to be collected. Here we have attainable goals. That's something that could optionally be collected. And so what I'm going to do is add those essential fields that Linda was mentioning. We'll leave attainable goals here. So over here on the available column on the right, we can select those fields, or pages as they're called here. One of those is going to be gender. So I select gender, and then I use this little left arrow to send it over. So now gender would be collected as well. Scroll down a little bit. Here's native language. You may also double click to send it over. That's a little convenient. So I'll double click and native language has appeared over here now. And then the last one is ethnicity. So let's send ethnicity over there. And this actually is a page with 2 data fields being collected. So it has ethnicity being Hispanic or not Hispanic, and then race, which is all the other race fields that we're familiar with. I can also reorder these. So I'm going to put attainable goals at the bottom and move this down with this down arrow. So now what will happen is the first thing they're asked for is their name and ID. Once they click the next arrow, the student will be asked for the gender, followed by native language, and then by ethnicity and race, and at the end is attainable goals. We will click save. This is going to modify, in this case, the ABE template, ABE/ASE. So I click save. It takes me back to the templates, and this is the one we just modified. That is going to change all of the templates that are derived from this, all of the sessions that are derived from this template. And you may have 2 or 3 or more additional. You want to make sure to edit each one of these. Once they've all been edited, then any session that you use, over here's the testing sessions, is going to collect those 4 essential pieces of information. That is it. If you would like a walkthrough or you have any further questions, please contact tech support. We will be glad to assist you. And thank you so much for your cooperation.
Jesse, I have one quick thing to add.
Thank you.
The one thing we can reassure everybody is that once you set up to collect demographics, if they already exist in TE, they will not be asked for in eTest. So your students will not be asked for it once it's in TE. And it goes automatically from eTest to TE. So just want to make that clear that you won't be asked, your students won't be asked for this information, even though you've set up to collect it, if it already exists.
Very good point. Thank you, Richard. And I'd also add that if you say do this on your pretest sessions, you collect it once, when they come back to post-test, they will not be asked again because that data already exists, similar to what he was just saying. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Jesse. So now I want to show you, we have a resource to share with you that you will be able to get on the CASAS website. And this is something that if you are not already collecting the demographics, or even if you are, it's a resource for you to work with students to show them how to fill out these demographics fields. So the first one is about entering their ID, uh, gender. So this, we've already done the screenshots. You can edit this as you wish, but this is a Word document that is something that we are offering to you to help you, and really you can make it a lesson. It's something students may need to do for other purposes as well. And this shows, this is a way to prepare them and actually to help them determine how they can fill out these fields. So this is for your use, and we hope you find it useful. So now, let me go back to this PowerPoint, and I want to show you, so that this, oops. Actually, I wanted to mention that these are screenshots that Jesse just showed you, and they are in the PowerPoint. So if you want to review them, pull them out, you'll be able to easily get them from the PowerPoint without having to listen to the whole webinar recording. And then this is the link in order to get that Word doc, the resource that I just showed you about how to prepare students to fill out the demographic fields. Just want to mention too that if you would like to participate in the field test studies for the new ESL reading and listening series, this is information about it. We're continuing this and hope that at some point in 2021 you might be ready to help us with this. We know you're kind of scrambling now to get as much testing done as you can, having lost time with COVID. But if you can help us when you get sorted out and have some discretionary time at some point, we would really appreciate it if you can help. So this is the information about it. The students get a gift card, and there's all kinds of information about it. Karen, who you heard earlier, is our coordinator of field testing, and she can help you. She would be helping you get started and go through this process. And there's a spot on the homepage where you can also sign up. All right, now I'm going to invite Richard Ackerman to tell us about TE.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to tell you two short segments here, one about TOPS Pro and the other about Classmate for mobile attendance. Go next slide. So over Thanksgiving, TOPS Pro Enterprise and eTests will be offline. And that's because we're making one very significant change to TOPS Pro. And that is that we're moving the student demographic records from the site level to the agency level. Next. So why would you do that? I'm glad you asked. There's really one very basic reason, and that's to make managing student records a lot more efficient. And this is not just for you, but also for TE. And the history behind this is that, and this goes way back to our legacy application too, when agencies weren't able to guarantee that they had a unique student ID at the agency level, but they could at the site. And so that's why we've been collecting them there for so long. And we figure it's time to move them to the agency level where we think they belong. So let's look at where they are today. In TE 3.0, we have student demographics, anywhere a student attends. So in this example, there's 4 different sites. The blue arrow is showing a fictitious student who's at 2 sites, at South Site and at Carlsbad. So as you know, you would have demographic records for that student at both of those sites. Next. So in TE 4.0, we now will only have student demographics at the agency level. So even though that student was at 2 sites, they'll still have their activity, well, their activity records will all be related to one set of demographics at the agency level at Rolling Hills. So that's the major change. Next slide. And so what are the advantages? The advantages are that we don't have duplicated demographics anymore. That should help performance a bit. There's no more copying demographics across sites. We'll have more enhanced capability with other systems. And it also supports new features that are on the way, which we'll be telling you about in the coming months. So those are the advantages. There'll be some only slight modifications to your workflow. And we're going to have a demo for that available probably on Friday. So if you watch the start page in TOPS Pro Enterprise, there'll be an announcement about that. And you should already have seen an announcement about TOPS Pro Enterprise not being available and eTest over Thanksgiving. And in that same area, we'll be announcing as soon as we have a demo for these changes. And once again, I expect that'll be Friday. Hopefully we'll get it done by then. So that's it for the TOPS Pro. Thank you. Oh, we got a slide for this. Very good. So this is just so you're aware we're doing that work. And then I want to tell you quickly about TE Classmate. This is for people who are using TOPS Pro Enterprise for doing their attendance. Next slide. And particularly mobile attendance, and only if you're doing it for daily attendance. And we know a lot of people aren't yet, but we do recommend doing daily attendance. And actually TE Classmate will make that easier, because now a teacher doesn't have to log into TE at all. What they do instead is, we'll just go to the next slide, please. You can download the application either from for your Android phone or iPhone, and then you will automatically receive your student class list on the application. So what we're showing here is a login screen for the teacher. There also is a login for the student as well, and that's because this application could also be used for communications between the teacher and the student. So some people may be familiar with the Remind application, so it works much like that. The teacher could send assignments to students and also chat with students through the same application if the student also has a phone and wants to install this. But the primary use for now is for attendance. I'll go to the next slide. And this is an example of a teacher who has one class, their ABE ASE class, and they may also have distance learning. That's why there's that DL there. We can go to the next slide. And here we see that the class list has been downloaded automatically. And in a standard class, you know, let's say that met for 90 minutes, everyone would already be pre-populated with 90 minutes. So this is a very fast way to do your attendance, because all you would do is tap the X for any student that was absent today. So if you were absent, then obviously you weren't here for 90 minutes, it'll just zero out. And then you click submit and you're done, and that's all it is. But what we're also showing here is that there's a lot of variability now that there's distance learning going on, and there's also very discrete values. So in this very fictitious example, the first student has 35 minutes face-to-face and 74 minutes for distance learning. So the plus and minus signs are there, so you can decrement and increment by 5. So in case it's a really close number, that's one way of doing it. And if you go to the last slide, please, the other way is to use the keypad, and then you could directly enter a number. So that's where Classmate is today. We just made some enhancements recently, and we are piloting now. And so if anyone's interested in piloting, please contact me or tech support, and we'd be glad to have you in the pilot. And just want to let you know that this was available. Thank you.
Richard, just one point. Could you mention about whether it's available in TE Basics or TE Enhanced?
Yeah, you would have to have TE Enhanced, because this is, like I said, this is for people who are already doing attendance in TE at the class level. And so this is an extension. It's a mobile application to make taking attendance easier.
Thank you. And that's for any state, not just California, right?
Correct. Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Now we will turn the stage over to Maria Tellez from Hacienda La Puente, and I will ask you to go ahead. Thank you.
All righty. Hi, everyone. Let me share my PowerPoint right now. And oh, there we go. So thank you so much for allowing me to present today. Once again, my name is Maria Tellez. I'm the Administrator of Counseling Services over here at Hacienda La Puente Adult Education. What I'm going to be going over today is how we set up our registration process, along with a unique way that we're actually testing our students, and then how we're trying to get more post-testers to come in and post-test with us. And so starting off with registration, right now, our registration process is currently 3 steps. The first thing that a student does is they go to the HLPAE website, and then they click on one of these links here. That link will take them to a registration form. Second, they fill out the testing agreement form. And then the third, they're actually asked to make an appointment. And I actually want to point out that all of these three areas, the three steps that they have to do, it's a seamless process. And I'll show you how that looks like through the presentation as I'm showing you the different forms. It's a seamless process where students just need, once they're done and they submit one form, they click on a link that will take them to another, and then the final one, which is the appointment. So I'll show you that in the next few slides. So with the first step being that they click onto the links to register for a class. First, the thing that they do is fill out our registration form. I'm not going to go through all of the things that we asked them. It's essentially reflective of our physical registration form. All those questions are there. And so once they're done filling out their information, they're then asked to click on a link that will take them to the CASAS testing agreement form. And so here, it's actually just a screenshot of what I wrote. And but when the students get it, so once they submit it, this link here is actually a link that they can click on. So I just wanted to present this for today in a bigger format so everybody can see what it is that they have to do once they're done clicking on the registration, once they're done going through the registration form. I also want to note that before they actually submit, there's a warning message that pops up that I added to the registration form that warns them that after they submit to please click on the link that's available to them. And so then that way, and with the hopes that that will eliminate them from skipping or shutting down their screen once they're done with the registration form. So once the students are done with our online registration form, they click the link, and it will then take them to our CASAS testing agreement form. And this is for everybody. Right now at Hacienda La Puente, we're testing students both in person and online remotely. And so here's where they actually get to tell us how they want to be tested. So in this section here, where this is where I'll ask them, do you want to take it in a class or at home? If they do decide to take it in a classroom, the form will automatically send them to a section where it will ask them which campus they want to enroll in. And then once they choose the campus, then they're asked to click on a link that's directed to our Calendly. Right now, we're currently using an online appointment platform called Calendly. It's free, and where students are able to make the appointments for testing, whether it's in person or at home. And so if they click on at home, then they're asked about what kind of computers they plan on using for their CASAS testing. And I don't know if you could see this here, but it asks them to choose a computer that they're planning to use. So if they're using their phone at that moment, then they're actually answering for whatever they plan on using for the day of the exam. If it's Windows 10 or personal, they're automatically sent to the questions that I'll show you in a bit. Otherwise, if they don't have a Windows personal computer or laptop, they're then asked to specify what type of computer that they're planning on using for that day. And so once they click on that, then they're asked to do the internet compatibility. So they're asked to test their internet speed and asked to write down the important information that they need regarding their internet capability, compatibility. And then once they're done with that, then they're actually reminded again that the computer that they said that they're going to be using the day of the exam needs to be used on that day. Otherwise, if they said that they're going to be using a Windows 10 and then they use an iPad, it backs up our proctors, because then they have to troubleshoot another way to assist with that. And I'll explain more about that in a later slide as to why they have to troubleshoot when that happens. But so I do ask them to click on yes to agree that they're going to be using that computer that they said they're going to be using. And then afterwards, it asks them, it goes into the testing rules. And I know that these screenshots are really small and I'm not quite sure if everybody can see them, but after I'm done with this presentation, I'll provide you with an offline, with a link to an offline form. Basically what I did was I created a copy of the current form that we're using for our students. I created a copy so then that way I can share that offline copy out to anybody who wants to see it. So as soon as I'm done with this presentation, I'll put it in either the chat or the questions and answers. So that way you have that accessible and you can take a look at that. And when you do get it, feel free to go ahead and fill it out and navigate through the form because it's not connected to us in any way. It's just a copy.
Maria, I have a quick question that's popped up a couple times in the Q&A, please. What's the platform? Are you using Google Forms for these registration forms?
Yes, we're using Google Forms.
Great. And Calendly was the method for using setting up the appointment times, correct?
Correct. Yes. Google Forms is what all of our forms are on, and then Calendly is the online appointment program.
Right. And there was a question about if you did anything in terms of security for collecting this data, or is it within the firewall that your school already has?
It's within our school.
Great. That's it. Thank you, Maria.
You're welcome. And so the rules that I have here are actually taken from the CASAS. A lot of these things that I took were from the CASAS guidelines for testing the max of 5 students, so 1 proctor to 5 students. And so I just took all of those testing rules and pasted it into here. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, as you could see, is we've actually translated both our registration form and testing agreement form and 4 different languages, so English, Spanish, Chinese, and Korean. While we're fortunate enough to have a Spanish translator, we had to make do with using Google Translate to help us out with Chinese and Korean. You know, we wanted to make sure we reach as many students as we possibly can, and we didn't want to miss out on the different populations that live within our communities. So we just use Google Translate to assist us with that. We're hoping in the future that we're going to be having somebody to help us out with the Chinese translation. But for now, I mean, for the most part, it seems like students are understanding it because they are able to register into the class that they're needing and also take a look at the testing agreement form and questions. And so once they agree to the testing rules, this is when they start going into the testing agreement, which includes all the different things that they need to agree on that once again were based from the CASAS guidelines for 1 proctor to 5 student testers. And so I'm only going to show a little snippet of a few of the questions that are being asked. But like I said, after this presentation, I'm more than happy to provide you with that offline form so you can see all of the questions that the students need to agree to before they actually, before the day of their exam. And so, so here's one where it just reminds them that they need to keep the camera on during the test, that we will not be recording them and that they will not be recording us. And they have to say, yes, they agree to that. And then they have to agree to not allowing anybody else in the room with them, that they can't use a translator. So these are just a few of the ones that you can see from our agreement form. And so once they complete the agreement, they reviewed all the rules. Once again, prior to them submitting, they're given a warning, letting them know that the last step is for them to actually create an appointment to make a test. And so this agreement is for all of our programs. So as you can see here, if an ESL student wants to take the CASAS test, they're asked to click on this link here. If they want to do a high school diploma or high school equivalency, they're asked to click on this form here. And so a student will then click on the link that applies to the program that they want, and then it will automatically take them to the Calendly link. So if you're not familiarized with Calendly, this is actually how it looks like from a student or from an outside perspective. I set it up where, once again, it just lets them know that they're going to be testing and before they actually enroll in the class. It's in 4 different languages. And the system is really user-friendly. They use the dates over here. And unfortunately, when I did this slide, I forgot to add a screenshot of once they click on a date, to the right-hand side pops up a list of times that they can test. And those times coincide with the availability of our assessment techs. And so if a student wants to test on September 16th, up pops the list of availabilities, for that time or for that day. And then once the student clicks on that, then on the time, they're then sent to this area here where they can put their name and email address. And so for ESL, we actually have them coming in at different times. And so once the time is selected, if somebody else were to come in, then that time won't be available for the next student that comes in, but they'll have other times to choose from. So they fill this out here. There are a few things that we need from particularly our students who are in our citizenship program. Otherwise, then once they're done filling out this information, they click on schedule event, and up pops a confirmation letting them know that that they've successfully created their appointments. Not only do they get to see this here, but Calendly sends them a confirmation letting them know that they've created an appointment using Calendly, the time that they chose. Also, that's unfortunately not here. This was in an earlier version that I did, but the one that we're currently using now has a link to a Google Docs where students can click on it and actually download a document kind of preparing them for the day of their exam. So and it's universal for everyone. So there's a section for students who want to come onto our campus. It goes over a waiver that they have to sign. Then there's another section there specifically for remote, how to prepare their computers, reminding them again of the rules and what they need in order to be successful in the day of their exam. Not only does it send them the confirmation, but I also set up the Calendly to send them 2 reminders prior to the day of their exam. The first reminder goes out 48 hours before, and then the second one 24 hours. And then our proctors actually notify the students. Our proctors are the third reminders to reminding students that they have an appointment the next day. And all these reminders, as you can see here, includes the Zoom link, as well as the password to enter into to the testing. And so that is basically it for our Calendly and how we have everything set up. As you can see, it's seamless where students go along and click on links and then at the end create an appointment. In this next section here, unless
I do have one quick question
Sure.
for you, if you mind, Maria. After you collect the data in the Google Forms, do you have a procedure for getting that data into TOPS Pro Enterprise?
Yes. So the way that we do it, and I'll kind of go over it again in a later slide. Our support team actually goes in, takes that information, and then puts it into to our student information system called ASAP. And then our data support team, our data support person, she actually takes that information and then uploads it into TE.
Got it. And then just kind of as an intro into your next section, for perspective, how many students are you testing remotely in terms of remotely versus in person, please?
So last I checked, which was last Friday, I pulled up a report on TE to see who we've been remote testing, and we've actually been remote testing close to 430 students.
Wow, right. Excellent. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And so in this section here, this is how a unique way that we're actually testing our students using the 1 to 5 method, the 1 proctor to 5 student method on CASAS. But before I go in and explain what we're doing, I want to make a note and let everybody know that in the procedures that I'm going to be showing you, the students are actually testing from their own device. We are not giving them control of our computer. They are provided with that remote access code, and then they are taking the test from their own devices and not through ours. So I just kind of want to reiterate that before I go on, just so then that way you can, for the majority of you who are doing the 1 to 5, you can kind of go along with me and know what I'm referring to. And so in this case here, what we're doing is our proctors choose a main computer that they want to work off of. And then what they actually do is the proctors sign into multiple computers using their same Zoom account to go into each of these computers. So in this example here, I'll just say that we're going to be testing 3 students this day. So our proctors sign into the computers 3 times using the same Zoom account. And so once they sign into the computers 3 times, then students are allowed into the meeting. And then they do everything else that they have to do with them, making sure that it's them, the students, and then providing them with the remote access code. And then once all that is done and they've checked all of the students coming in and their testing environment and ensuring that nobody is in the room with them, letting them know to leave their video on and mics on, the students are then assigned a breakout room. Now, I know this is kind of small, but I don't know if you could see here, but I'm actually here 3 times. So there's a Maria Tejas 1, 2, and 3. And then here's our testing students 1, 2, and 3. And so then what our proctors will then do is pair a student with their proctor. So in this case, Maria Tejas, the first one, is going to be assigned to breakout room with student number 1. Maria Tejas, the second, is going to be assigned to student number 2 in breakout 2. And then the last Maria Tejas is going to be assigned to student number 3 in breakout room 3. And so let me move my toolbar really quick because I can't see the rest. Alrighty. And so once they're all assigned, the following then takes place. So once they've done all of the procedures in the guidelines, they've been provided with the remote access codes, all the students are ready to start. The proctors will then open up all the rooms and then move to the logged in computers to accept all their multiple selves. So remember, in this case, I signed into 3 different computers using the same Zoom link 3 times. So I have to physically move to these computers and accept myself into that breakout room. And then the end result is that our proctors can actually see all the students testing without needing to toggle between the breakout rooms. And so it's been easier for them to do this since they're able to see them all. If a student has during this time also, I want to note that our proctors have their videos off and sounds off. However, the students are shown their video. Keep in mind, I know you don't see videos here, but this was us doing a trial run. So that's why there was no student videos here, but when they are actually testing, the student videos are on as well as the mics. and then they're able to kind of navigate. So if somebody has a question, then the proctor just goes, unmutes herself, and then answers the question if the student has one, or finishes off the student if they're done. Are there any questions before I move on with regards to this section here?
Maria, there's a couple of facility type questions, such as, did you need to get a waiver for your staff to come on campus?
Yes, we had to get approval for that. And then especially for the testing, because like I said, right now, everything is being offered remotely. So we had to get permission for us to test, and then we can only test a certain amount of students, which is why, we're utilizing Calendly. because unlike before, we're not able to accept just anybody on our campus. And as with the CASAS, we want to make sure that we test no more than 5. So we have a Calendly set up where no more than 5 students can join on that appointment.
Very clever. Also, there was a question about the students that might find it difficult to navigate, perhaps the low-level students that need help with the literacy things. And within your counseling staff, do you reach out to them and provide additional services to complete the online registration that might be too difficult for them in a non-native language? Or just in general, navigating the digital literacy challenges?
So with our proctor team, they try their best, and if they notice, which I'll kind of get into in the next slide, I'll explain it there because I do touch upon that with regards to troubleshooting with our lower level ESL students.
Excellent. And then the last technical question before you get into that was the version of Zoom that you're using, is it the free version of Zoom, or do you have one of the site licenses?
I do have a site license. When our proctors first started doing this, they just had the regular free version, and it did work with the free version of Zoom.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so I wanted to share the perspective of our proctors, since they're the ones that are day in and day out doing all this work. So I wanted to share with you their feedback, just so then that way you can keep that in mind. One of the things that they thought was positive was the fact that students get to choose their testing modality. So we're not restricted to just in-person or just restricted to just remote. Students get to choose how they want to test. Not only that, but it provides students with 21st century skills. Not only do they have to, that they're getting their feet wet with regards to filling out an application, but I mean, how great is it that they're using this Calendly program to learn how to make appointments. And even though, you know, some other appointment software programs aren't as user friendly, but how it's great for them to actually use something that that can kind of get their feet wet with regards to making their own appointments. And not only that, but our registration process is pretty easy to understand. There's step-by-step instructions that they have to go by, you know, like I said, with the 3-step instructions, and also that it's in multiple languages. And something that I touched upon already is that Calendly is very user-friendly. There's no need to constantly make appointments. And so that's what I had in mind when I decided to use Calendly, was because I envisioned just a lot of students or potential students wanting to call in and make appointments, and our support staff just constantly making appointments day in and day out. So, or not only that, but our returning students, since they've been with us for quite some time, they figured out the extension to our testing lab and will go and bypass our main office and go straight and call up the testing lab. So since they were so focused on trying to test students, I didn't want them to interrupt them. So that's where that's why this Calendly was set up. And also it's easy for our proctors to look up testers. So Calendly has a feature where you can actually export an Excel spreadsheet, and it will show you who's going to be testing that within in the future. So you could check them out to see who's tested. Also, you can also pull out a Excel spreadsheet of students who were in the past that have tested or didn't test. But as pertaining to that question that I got earlier with regards to language barrier, I mean, that's our biggest con right now is the language barrier. I mean, we've had our proctors have been great with regards to transitioning. You know, if they notice that a student is in the multiple testers testing and they're having a hard time trying to communicate with that student, what they'll end up doing is just recommending that the student signs up for a testing day using remote control access, and then touches base with them after the testing to set up that appointment. We do have amazing teachers who have also helped out their students with regards to helping them get started. Like I said, with some of our lower level Spanish speakers, you know, I've been there to assist them as well as our front office staff. And if there's anybody that needs extra assistance, I mean, we try to figure out and troubleshoot who we can ask to help out with regards to translating. And then we have to have just extra computers on in the room, just so then that way we can keep track, just in case. And then just a lack of flexibility. Pre-COVID, you know, anybody could come in and register for our classes at any time. But now we need to have these appointments in place because of the fact that we're restricted to in-person as well as remote. And the last one that is actually kind of funny, because students are sharing the Calendly link with their friends and family who are interested, which is great, they're interested, but they're giving them the wrong link. So they end up giving their friends and family the Calendly link instead of their registration link, which is what they need. So then on the day of the exam, if the student doesn't have a registration or student ID, then it kind of throws a wrench and our proctors have to quickly troubleshoot that as well. And with regards, with regards to trying to get students to post-test, we are very lucky at Hacienda La Puente, where we work with various different agencies within our communities who not only provide free services to our students, but oftentimes we get donations. And so seeing that we were not being successful with trying to get students back to post-test. Pre-test was easy, but post-test wasn't. We decided to use some of those donations to buy extra books. And so so that way we can give it away, give them out to the students who have completed an NRS level. So the students, in order to get a free book, the students need to have a valid pre and post test and then also complete an NRS level. And then they're given a book that pertains to their program as well as level. And my final slide, I'm very fortunate to work with a great team. I mean, I'm super blessed with them here. All of them believe in our mission. You know, they believe that what we're doing and the services that we're providing to our students is essential. And they are working and brainstorming and coming up to me with ideas and ways that we can better improve the process. And so as you can see here, it's a huge team effort. And we wouldn't be where we are today without everyone just working together. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria. That was so much great information. I know everyone really appreciated it. So, so just everyone knows that session is going to be, it is already posted on our CASAS website, so you can see. And I think Maria now can take some time and look in the Q&A and see what kinds of questions there are that she wasn't able to already answer. So now I'm going to go into the CASAS remote testing update. And I just, in following on from what Maria was saying, I want to start with these few points. That just to clarify that when you're testing more than one student at a time, up to 5 is permitted. The remote control approach that Maria was saying that they use when a lower level student needs extra help, that is only permitted in one-on-one. And that is what we call approach 1. And that is where the student takes the test on the proctor's device, and you can use a variety of student devices. The student can, that is. It can be a lot of things, not a phone, but almost anything else, one-on-one, because the e-test is delivered on the proctor's device and then remote controlled to the student. However, the approach that Maria shared with you, where they have the different computers in the lab, and the Maria Tejas was on 3 different computers, that's only with approach 2, where the student has a Windows 10, or what we call approach 3, where they have a Chromebook with kiosk mode, or an iPad with what's called secure access mode that has to be set up in advance, and that is to get test security on the student's device. So as it turns out in Hacienda de la Puente, they have students, quite a few, as I understand it, who do have access to a Windows 10 computer of some kind. And that's how they're able to do this with those students. But the only way you can do students with multiple test takers at a time is with approach 2 or 3. Otherwise, it has to be using the remote control if you're going to do one-on-one. So the wonderful multiple lab computers approach that she showed is, as I just want to really reiterate, is with a Windows 10 or a Chromebook with kiosk or an iPad with this other access mode. So, but using, it's very nice that using multiple lab computers is a way to see the test taker's video. And rather than having, like in Zoom and the approach that we have in our guidelines is that the proctor has to go from room to room, Zoom breakout room to breakout room. And that, you know, you may not catch something, or you may not find, you know, student might have to wait to get your help. So the approach she showed is very nice because you can see all the students at once, but it is this limitation of only Windows 10 or Chromebooks, as I said. And then another tip that we want to share with you is that if your agency does purchase Chromebooks, I know some of you are getting some money, and if you're buying Chromebooks, before you give them out to students, have your IT department set them up in kiosk mode, because that way they can use them to take the NRS approved tests. That's a requirement in order to use approach 3. The Chromebook has to be on kiosk mode, or if it's an iPad, it has to be in the secure access mode. So with that extra security enabled, the Chromebook can be used for remote testing. Otherwise, it can't. And I know that that's where you would have to use, normally, or most people are using the remote control one-on-one only if a Chromebook doesn't have the kiosk mode. I'll just go back quickly and wanted to point out that these are there are 4 current approaches to remote testing. Hopefully you're all familiar with these. They're on the website on the remote testing page with detailed guidelines. But I want to share with you some new directions that we're exploring, because these approaches that we put them out quickly and to make it possible for you to do remote testing right away. But they are temporary, and as we find some better solutions, we would replace the ones that we put out, but so far not yet. But just to give you a sense of where we're going, we are doing some pilots right now with a few agencies that are trying out up to 12 students at a time. So again, now only up to 5, but we're having them try out up to 12 using the approach 2 or 3, as I mentioned, Windows 10 or the Chromebooks or iPads. We're also experimenting in pilot mode with phones for the listening, reading, and math tests. So again, that's still in a pilot phase. And hopefully at some point early in the new year, we'll be able to tell you about that. We're also working on integrating video conferencing right into e-tests. We're making good progress with that. It's in development, and that would simplify the process because it would be right there in e-tests and you wouldn't have to use something like Zoom as well. So that's exciting. And finally, we are exploring the possibility of having a third-party proctoring service. And that is depending on whether there's enough interest in it, because it would be, for sure, expensive. So if you are interested in that and you think that that's within your budget and you would like us to offer that option, please do email us at remotetesting@casas.org so that we can know the level of interest in this option. Just to remind you, remote testing can only be done with e-tests and not paper tests for our NRS approved tests. You cannot copy, scan, or reproduce the tests or send them out or record the sessions. Also, I just want to say that listening is very much permitted using the 4 approaches that we already have out there. One thing we have changed is that you may now have permission to use headphones or earbuds when you're testing listening. Some programs that never tested with listening before have been trying it because it is actually a little bit easier to do remotely than reading or math, some have found. So I would encourage you to explore that if it's permitted in your state or program. And if you're going to, and students aren't familiar with the format, please have them use or try out the format on the e-test sampler, which is on the CASAS website and is free. Another couple of innovative ideas is, as Maria was saying, is to offer incentives. It could be gift cards, food, or books as they do. Another idea is to group students together who have the same device. That can maybe help with setting up the remote testing session. This is just a reminder that be sure to stop your video and mute your microphone when the test begins after the practice question, and that'll minimize distractions for the students. And if you have any ideas of your own, please send them in to remotetesting@casas.org so we can put them on the next webinar. We'd love to hear what you have discovered. Just real quickly, we have something called a reading level indicator that can be used as an informal assessment for provisional placement. It's a 601R and it can be given without a proctor. It can be given on a phone. There's a paper version as well, but if you use it online with TE, it's free. It's for ABE and NRS ESL 3 and above. You get a level, you don't get a scale score, but it's not an NRS approved test and you still have to give a pretest as soon as you can. But it's just a way of getting a student into a level quickly and without the remote testing formality. So we are offering some training. This Friday, there's a live training that you can sign up for on the CASAS website, TOPS Pro Basics. We're also, that's 10 a.m. this Friday. We're also offering for our new implementation trainings, this is for instructors or e-test proctors or staff. These modules are going to be offered by CASAS staff and you can register for them on the CASAS website, whether it's for e-tests or paper or just to learn about how to interpret reports. And you get a certificate and we'll have these through May or possibly beyond. We have office hours every Friday now at 11 Pacific, 2 Eastern. You can sign up and that's just any question you want to ask. Let us know and there will be CASAS staff of all types there to answer any question you may have. You can register on the CASAS website. Our next webinar is January 13th. We're taking a break for December, but January 13th, same time, and hope you can join us. So you can, soon after, we're going to have the registration available on the website. So here's all of the ways that you can contact us. So please do, and thank you very, very much for attending today. We will stay on a little bit longer if you have additional questions that you'd like to ask in the Q&A. And again, thanks so much for attending. Just seeing some of these questions. The training on Friday is 10 Pacific. This Friday for TOPS Pro Basics. I had to rush through these. So the trainings, the live trainings, if you would like to take the modules that way, you can also do them self-paced on the CASAS website. But if you would like to attend a live training, that's also possible on these particular dates and times. And the office hours, if you have any questions at all, please come and ask. We will have tech support staff there as well. The next webinar is on January 13th. Same time, 11 Pacific, 2 Eastern. And then here are all the emails for all the particular departments where you can ask specific questions. This is really the best way to contact us, whether you want to get started with CASAS or you have a question about ordering, tech support, training, getting started with e-tests, or remote testing.
So we have no unanswered questions in the question box, so we'll just give another minute in case someone has a last minute question, and then we'll be ending this webinar. So thank you very much for joining us today, and we hope to see you again in January.